Wow. Sheila, thank you so much for a great presentation about your experience and Share the Care. To all the attendees, thank you so much for joining so early this Friday morning, especially for those in the West Coast of the United States. As we transition into the Q&A part of this session, please use the chat section to type in your questions. My name is Taffer Shah, and I'm the caregiver representative for the MSA Coalition. I look forward to this section of the conference, as we probably have a great mix of MSA patients, caregivers, and family members. And without further ado, let's kick off with a question for Sheila. So Sheila, through all of your experience, especially in the past few years, have you found the need to evolve a bit as we went through the pandemic? You mentioned the possible use of Zoom, but do you feel other things have evolved? If so, do you have any pointers in particular that help with caregiver groups to be as impactful in remote settings?
Yes, thank goodness for Zoom, because if we didn't have Zoom, we would all have been in trouble during the past few years. So although holding a meeting on Zoom is not the first choice, it's a choice that can be used for a meeting. But also we did come up with some ideas for groups. Actually, we have several protocols for groups that are taking care of someone with other conditions like Alzheimer's or dementia, or people who live alone without family, or even faith community groups who want to use Share the Care in a slightly different way to help their community. But one of the ways that it worked for the COVID issue was, rather than, you can't have 20 people, but you could have a very tiny group of people that might come to the home. Maybe they don't spend a lot of time there during the COVID circumstance, but you could have an outer group that supports the inner group, that does all kinds of things that are needed, and bring them into the inner support group. In other words, like meals or shopping or raking leaves or shoveling snow or anything. So just thinking about ways that you can solve a problem. Share the Care is really creative caregiving, because you got to sometimes create something to make it work, as you've seen many of those people in other groups too.
Yes, thank you very much for that. I'm looking at some comments, and again, for those of you online, please use the chat function if you have any questions, and we'll ask them for Sheila. So we just have a comment here from Joy. She writes, I am my husband's caregiver, and it is so hard to ask others for help. I have learned that people are very willing to help. They just need to know what needs to be done, and never ask people to do things they don't want to do.
Yes.
Even something as simple as picking up a prescription is a huge help.
That's absolutely true. In fact, one of the ways when I'm teaching about Share the Care to health professionals, to give them a deeper understanding and some pointers, when you say to someone, can you help me? That's so broad. You have what are they going to ask me to do? I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if, people get a little scared. But if you could say, could you take Joe to his appointment at 3:00 and wait for him, bring him back, maybe make lunch and just stay in the house with him until 4:00 when I'll be back. So specifics and any other details that they need to know when they accept that job is important to give them at that time. But asking people for help, let me just say this, is giving them a gift, because we're going to need so many caregivers in the future, and many people have never been in this position yet. So, for example, if Susan had never allowed us finally to help her, there would be no Share the Care. And we got so much out of doing it. And same thing with Cappy. I mean, every time you allow people the opportunity to grow emotionally and spiritually and practically, it's a great gift. It's a great gift.
Very good. Thank you for that. We have another question from Joy. And I think this is fairly applicable, especially with MSK patients, as a lot of them are immunocompromised. And the question is, do most groups, and Sheila, maybe you know the answer to this, maybe not, do most groups request that a support friend who comes into the home take a COVID test each time before they enter the house?
Well, we've never had the COVID issue before. So if that makes you feel more comfortable, why not? You know, people, I doubt they will resist it. Whatever makes you feel more secure and more comfortable. Maybe you also keep the group very small of the people who come into the home. The same thing applies with people with dementia who can't take, or even elderly people who can't take 10 or 15 people coming and going. So tiny group, inner group is really a great solution. But you may come up with your own solutions on how to do something as well.
Very good, thank you. And then we have Rebecca here. I'm wondering if this has worked when the illness is depression.
Actually, when I first started talking about Share the Care, I was invited by a large pharmaceutical company to contribute some thoughts about that for depression. They were writing a booklet or something, if I recall correctly. Yes, I think what would need to happen would be the people who are interacting with a person with depression need to understand how to work with that person, how they react to certain things, what can you do, what you shouldn't do, you know, those sorts of things that probably only a caregiver can tell them because they know the person, you know, they're a family member or a loved one or something. So yes, but they need to have a little bit of education on how to do it, and also the type of person that they are. If you get someone who's yakking all the time, that's maybe not a good fit. They should be doing some other job. But people who have a more quiet persona, who are more gentle, who are very aware of what's going on in somebody else, to take on that job. And I would keep it small. And like I say, you can have outer people doing all kinds of things. I hope it helps.
Thank you, Sheila. We're just lots of questions here. So another is, do you have any advice when you may have 3 or more generations of folks working together in a support group? So maybe you have folks that are like grandparents with grandchildren, and maybe you have like teenagers involved.
Yeah.
Is there any advice or pointers you can give there?
Well, yeah, then the jobs that you ask these people to do should be equivalent to what they're capable of doing. Little children can walk the dog or feed the cat or pick up the mail and bring it to, you know, the person who needs that. And you want to include them because you don't want children to be afraid of someone who is ill with something or elderly or whatever the circumstance is. You want them to be able to do something and feel like part of the group, and also introduce them to creating that empathy and that compassion within themselves. And I think little kids today are way ahead of the ball game in that department. They seem to have come straight from heaven sometimes, but having a child interact, I think brings great joy. Now, teenagers, they may have gotten their driver's license recently or something, but they can do errands. They can, you know, help out in the yard. They can, go pick up stuff. They can, whatever it is, they can start doing it and also learn how to interact with someone who needs that kind of care. And for the elderly, they've got tons of wisdom. They have, and they could be doing things that they're capable of doing. Baking cookies, just sitting with someone and doing their knitting while they're keeping that person company, or, ask them what they would like to do. That's the other thing. Nobody ever asks you what you are good at or what you like to do that could fit into the circumstance. So include everybody. Everybody has something unique to give.
Wonderful. Well, looking at the time, as we wrap up, I wanted to once again thank you, Sheila, for a wonderful session today. For everyone in the audience, thank you for the engagement, and thank you to all the caretakers out there. This session will be recorded and available shortly on the NSA Coalition website. And as we continue with the conference, we look forward to seeing you all in other sessions. Thank you very much and have a great day.